memory stirred in a haze of confusion, her limbs heavy, her thoughts tangled like seaweed in a storm. The last clear memory she had was of the ceremony, white lace, murmurs of disbelief, and then that devastating revelation. Now she was no longer in her room, nor in the chapel. The air felt thick with silence, the scent of burning wood clinging faintly to her nostrils. A soft fire flickered somewhere nearby, casting trembling shadows across a high-ceilinged library. She blinked slowly, her vision blurred. Through the shifting veil of disorientation, she could make out the outline of a man seated beside her. His presence was familiar yet alien now, like a once-beloved painting defaced with betrayal. Lord Adrian Blackthorne, the man she had loved and nearly wed, sat with hunched shoulders, his face marked by sleeplessness and sorrow. "You are awake," he said gently, placing a warm glass of wine to her lips. Elira hesitated but allowed the liquid to pass. It tasted of iron and ash and old memory. "How long?" she whispered, her voice cracking like dry parchment. "Only a few hours," Adrian murmured. "You collapsed when everything was revealed." Elira closed her eyes again. The memory flooded back in fragments, the harsh voice of the lawyer, the thunder of the storm outside, the silent gasp of the guests, the words, "You are already married." A shiver ran through her even though the fire glowed bright beside them. "You should not have brought me here," she said, not looking at him. "This house, this place, it's cursed." Adrian's voice thickened. "Cursed only by my choices. Not by you." Silence settled like dust between them. Elira sat up slowly, the library coming into clearer view, tall bookshelves, towering windows draped in heavy curtains, and the scent of aged paper mixed with lilac oil. This was Adrian's private refuge. It felt more like a mausoleum now. He knelt before her, his dark eyes filled with pain. "I know what I did. I should have told you. But how could I? When your presence lit every shadowed corner of my soul. How could I risk losing you?" "You already did," she replied quietly. He flinched. "I have a wife," he said, almost as if reciting an old wound. "Yes. That truth remains. But the woman upstairs, locked away with her madness and fury, she is not my companion, Elira. She is not my equal. She is not my heart. She is your responsibility," Elira said. Adrian stood abruptly, striding toward the fire, then away again. "You don't know what it's been like. The doctors said she was violent. Dangerous. I brought her here to keep her safe from herself, from the world. I never imagined that you..." He stopped, the words collapsing midair. "You should have imagined," Elira said. Her tone was soft, but each syllable rang like judgment. "You had no right to offer me a future built on secrets." He approached again, slower this time, and sat beside her not too close. "If I could go back, I would change it all. I would never have let you walk into Thornfell Hall without knowing its deepest rot. But I cannot change the past. I can only ask, will you listen to the rest? She nodded reluctantly. Her name is Mora, Adrian began. Mora Verlaine. We married in Castile when I was young, foolish, enchanted by her beauty and fire. But within months, it was clear something was wrong. She spoke to phantoms. She believed her bones were filled with snakes. She tried to drown our steward. I brought her here under the care of a physician who swore she could be calmed. He lied. She grew worse. And he faltered. I grew colder. I kept her hidden. Paid handsomely to ensure her silence. Until you. Elira's hands were clenched tightly in her lap. And now, I will send her to the Grendel Asylum in the north. It is a better place, safer. And you, he turned to her, a flicker of hope in his voice. You could stay. Not here. Somewhere new. A cottage on the cliffs of Dover. We could start again. She shook her head. No. You cannot cleanse betrayal with flowers and seaside promises. His hand reached for hers, then dropped. I would give everything to keep you. Even if it means losing you. Then lose me, Elira said. The words seemed to hollow him. For a long time, he said nothing. Outside, the storm had returned, rattling the windows as if fate itself were knocking. Elira rose on trembling legs and crossed the room to the window. The moors stretched far beyond, dark and windswept, yet free. Her heart ached at the sight. I must leave tomorrow, she said. I know. I will not say goodbye again. I will still wait, he replied. She turned once more to look at him. Not the man she once believed in, nor a complete stranger, but something in between. A ghost of possibility. Then she walked away, into the firelight's edge, and beyond. Rain fell like silver needles from the bruised sky as Elira Gray slipped out the side door of Thornfell Hall, the hem of her cloak already soaked through. It was just past dawn, though no sunlight broke through the clouds, only a pale gray hue that barely distinguished the earth from the heavens. She had not waited for breakfast, nor for farewell. Adrian was likely still pacing the library in silence, imagining words that could not undo what had been done. Elira's breath clouded in the morning chill. Her satchel, packed hastily in the night, weighed heavily against her shoulder, not with possessions, but with memory. She took only what was essential, a small purse of coin, her mother's worn locket, and the letters Adrian had once written, now unreadable from tear-stained ink. She didn't take the ring. That had been left on the windowsill. For hours she walked, her boots squelching through muddy paths, her thoughts a tempest fiercer than the storm. She had no clear destination, only a direction, away. At midday, her strength faltered. She sank beneath a sycamore tree on the edge of a ruined stone wall, its branches dripping rain like sorrow. There, for the first time since leaving, she let herself cry. Not delicate, composed tears, but the unrestrained sobbing of someone who had loved fully and lost not only love, but trust, and a home. When the rain finally eased into a misty drizzle, she rose with aching legs and continued. By dusk, the moors had given way to the first signs of farmland: crooked fences, distant windmills turning slowly like time itself. She had not planned to stop until she reached the next town, but her limbs betrayed her. A dizziness blurred her vision, and her steps faltered. Then, just as she stumbled near a bend in the path, a voice called out through the mist. "Hoy! You there, girl? You'll catch your death in this fog." Elira turned wearily. A figure approached, lantern swinging like a golden pendulum. The man was perhaps in his 40s, broad-shouldered, wearing a heavy wool coat and carrying a shepherd's crook. A black dog trotted beside him. "I'm fine," she said, though her knees nearly buckled. "You're half ghost in this weather," the man muttered, coming closer. "There's shelter at Hollow Bridge Farm just yonder. Come now. No sense dying of pride." Too tired to argue, Elira allowed herself to be guided. The man introduced himself as Brenneth, a widower who lived with his sister on the outskirts of the village of Larkfold. "We keep goats, mostly," he said. "And bees. Sister brews a wicked nettle tea that'll cure anything but heartbreak." Elira said nothing. The farmhouse was modest but warm, smelling of rosemary and old pine. Brenneth's sister, Mela, was a sprightly woman with graying curls and keen eyes. She said nothing about Elira's soaked condition, only handed her a towel, a cup of tea, and a boiled egg before disappearing into the kitchen. That night, Elira lay awake in a stranger's bed, listening to the creak of beams and the occasional howl of wind outside. She should have felt fear, or shame, or even regret. But all she felt was emptiness, and beneath it, something else: resolve. The next morning, Mela offered her work and lodging. "There's always tending to do," she said. "And your eyes don't flinch from pain. That's rare." Elira accepted. With nowhere to go, and no one waiting, the days passed in new rhythm, feeding goats, mending fences, boiling herbs, and learning the rhythms of bees. It was a humble life, so different from Thornfell, but in its simplicity, she began to rebuild. Yet not all was peace. One night, weeks later, Elira discovered an old diary hidden in the storage loft. Mela's diary, though faded and written in hurried script. Within it were pages that told of Thornfell Hall. Not just as a distant estate, but a cursed place. Mela had once served there, long before Elira ever arrived. She was called Mora Verlen, one page read. A fire behind her eyes. The master kept her hidden, claimed it was for safety. But there were rumors of a child lost, of screams in the night. A child Elira's hand trembled as she read. Could Adrian's past have been even darker than he confessed? Could there have been more victims than her? And what of the child? She shut the diary and stared into the shadows of the loft, her mind suddenly filled with questions she could not ignore. It was well past midnight when Elira descended the creaking stairs of Hollowbridge Farm, the worn leather-bound diary still pressed against her chest. The flickering candle she carried barely held back the darkness. Each step seemed to echo with a voice that wasn't her own, a whisper born not of air, but of memory. A child lost. Screams in the night. Could Adrian have hidden more than just his marriage? Mela had said nothing about the diary. Perhaps she had forgotten its existence, or perhaps she had meant for Elira to find it. In the cold stone cellar, Elira opened the book again, her fingers trembling as she turned to the page with the ink-stained corner. I saw her once. Not the madwoman, but the child. Eyes too wide. Skin too pale. Locked in the attic above the west wing. Adrian never spoke of her. Neither did Grace. But I heard the lullabies, and the crying that stopped too suddenly. Elira's breath caught in her throat. A child. That night, she dreamed of cold corridors and a girl with silver hair staring through a cracked mirror, whispering, "Don't trust his love." The next day, Elira could barely hold her composure. As she churned butter and lit the hearth, her thoughts returned again and again to Thornfell Hall. Not to Adrian, nor to Mora, but to the presence she had once felt above her room. The strange creaking sounds. The soft, muffled cries she had dismissed as wind. She needed answers. By noon, she approached Mela, who sat in the back garden tending the hives. "Tell me," Elira said, her voice firm, "about the girl." Mela didn't look up. She merely brushed honeycomb wax from her fingers and sighed. "I wondered how long it would take." "So it's true." "There was a child," Mela replied. "I saw her once. Barely 5 years old. Adrian never called her by name. I heard Grace mutter it once, Lyra. Like a flicker of light, but she never shone." "What happened to her?" Elira asked. "She vanished," Mela said flatly. "Some say she died. Some say she was sent away. But I think she's still there." A chill ran down Elira's spine. "Alive." Mela looked at her then, eyes sharp as needles. "Some ghosts don't need death to become restless." That night, Elira could no longer remain still. The ache in her heart had taken shape, no longer only sorrow or betrayal, but fear. And worse, doubt. Had Adrian Blackthorne, for all his pain and passion, deliberately silenced more than just his mad wife? By morning, she made her decision. "I'm going back," she told Mela, lacing her boots. "To Thornfell." Mela said nothing at first. Then, with a grim nod, she handed Elira a satchel. "Take this. Rosemary, valerian root, and silverwood oil. You may need more than courage. Do you believe the child's still there?" "I believe there's still something watching." As Elira walked the winding path back toward the moors, the sky darkened prematurely, as though the earth itself wished to warn her. The towering silhouette of Thornfell Hall loomed like a cathedral of regret, its Gothic spires stabbing the sky, its windows like lidless eyes. She reached the edge of the estate by dusk. The gate stood open, unattended. The grounds were overgrown. Weeds choked the rose beds. The fountain was dry and cracked. The silence here was thick, not the hush of peace, but the kind found in forgotten tombs. No servant answered when she knocked. She entered alone. The grand hall was unchanged. Portraits watched from the walls. The chandelier above swayed slightly as if someone had passed beneath it just moments before. She stepped forward, each footfall echoing like gunshots. And then softly a sound. A giggle. From upstairs. Her blood froze. "Elira," a child's voice sang from somewhere above. She looked up toward the west wing staircase. Dust stirred along the railing. No one should be here. Adrian had said he would board the place. No one should be here. Yet something was. With lantern in hand, Elira ascended the stairs. The voice came again, softer now, but closer. "Elira, don't leave me with her." At the top landing, the door to the attic stood slightly ajar. And from behind it a soft lullaby, sung off-key. The tune was familiar. Adrian had hummed it once. A cradle song from his youth. Her hand reached for the doorknob. But before she could turn it, a cold hand touched her shoulder. "Elira," said a voice behind her. She turned. And there stood Adrian Blackthorne. "Elira," Adrian whispered. He stood at the top of the staircase, his dark silhouette framed by the flickering lantern light behind her. The fire in his eyes had dimmed since their last encounter, replaced now with something quieter, heavier guilt, perhaps. Or despair. "What are you doing here?" she asked, voice sharp, hands still clutching the brass doorknob of the attic. "I could ask you the same," he said. "I thought you'd gone far away. I thought I'd lost you." "You had," Elira replied coldly. "But something, or someone, brought me back." She gestured toward the half-open attic door. "You told me everything, Adrian." "But that wasn't everything, was it?" Adrian flinched. "You found a diary." "I did. And I found the name Lyra." He closed his eyes for a moment. I had hoped that name had been erased by time. Erased by you mean? Adrian exhaled, his shoulders sagging as if the weight of his secrets had finally crushed the last vestige of pride from him. Come downstairs, he said softly. If you want the truth, I'll give it to you. But not here. Not in her shadow. Elira hesitated. The air behind the attic door felt colder than the wind outside. Something watched. Something waited. She let go of the doorknob and followed Adrian down to the drawing room. He lit the hearth with trembling hands and poured them both a glass of claret. Neither drank. The truth, then, he said at last. You deserve it. She was my daughter, Adrian began, staring into the flames. Lyra. Born of Mora and me, in the first years before her madness fully consumed her. Elira's heart stilled. She wasn't supposed to survive, Adrian continued. The doctors said Mora's pregnancy was unstable. They warned us. But she was born silent, fragile, but alive. He paused. His fingers trembled on the rim of the glass. For a time, I thought she might be my redemption. My salvation. But Mora grew worse. She believed Lyra wasn't a child, but a curse that Lyra had stolen her mind, her beauty, her soul. One night, I found her trying to. He broke off, eyes glazing. Trying to drown the baby in the fountain. Elira felt a hand clasp around her lungs. I intervened. I saved her. But after that, I hid her. You locked her away, Elira whispered. I had no choice, he said, pain edging every word. There were no asylums for children. No one who would take her without questions. And Lyra, she was different. What do you mean? She never cried. Never laughed. She barely spoke. But she watched. Always watched. Grace said there was something unnatural in her eyes. I didn't want to believe it. I told myself she was just traumatized. But then things began to happen. Servants quit. Strange dreams. Fires. One Stablivoi vanished completely. After that, I sealed the attic. How old was she? Elira asked. 7, Adrian replied. The last time I saw her, I had Grace bring her food. I told myself it was mercy. I told myself she was safer in silence. And now, Elira's voice shook. Is she still there? I don't know, Adrian admitted. The door is still locked. I haven't had the strength to open it. Sometimes I hear music. Laughter, or something like it? I pretend it's the wind. But the wind doesn't sing lullabies. A long silence followed. Elira stared into the fire. She could still feel the cold from the attic door against her skin. She could still hear that soft, eerie voice whispering her name. "You lied to me," she said finally. "Not just about Mora. You lied about Lyra. About everything." Adrian didn't deny it. "I loved you," she said. "I still love you," he replied. "But I've never deserved it." Elira stood slowly. "I'm going to her." "No," Adrian said, rising. "You don't know what's behind that door. She may be, beyond reason. Then she deserves someone who isn't afraid to open it." Before he could stop her, Elira turned and left the room, ascending once more into the cold hush of the upper floor. She stood before the attic door again. The silence on the other side was thick, pressing against her eardrums like ocean pressure. Her hand hovered over the knob. Then a voice. "Elira," it said. "I knew you'd come." Her heart nearly stopped. She turned the knob slowly. It moved easily now, as if it had never been locked. The door creaked open. And inside was nothing. Just an empty, dusty attic. A broken cradle. A faded doll. A small chair beside a window that faced the stormy moors. But no child. No Lyra. "Elira," the voice whispered again. She turned sharply. In the cracked mirror on the wall, a girl stood. Pale skin. Silver hair. Eyes black as obsidian. But there was no one else in the room. Elira took one step forward, and the air changed, grew colder, tighter, like a noose pulling shut. "Help me," the mirror girl said. "Before she comes back." The attic was silent, yet not still. Dust floated through the pale beam of moonlight like drifting memories, and the cracked mirror on the far wall shimmered faintly, as though something inside it breathed. Elira stood frozen. The girl in the mirror, silver-haired, wide-eyed, looked not at her reflection but directly through the glass, as if the boundary between this world and hers had grown paper-thin. "Help me," the girl whispered again, and this time, Elira felt her heart twist in recognition. There was something achingly familiar in the child's eyes, not the color or the shape, but the sorrow behind them. A loneliness that mirrored her own. "Lyra?" Elira asked. The mirror girl nodded, but her mouth didn't move. Instead, the reflection began to ripple, distorting the girl's features. For a moment, the image became more of Verlaine, her face contorted in madness, mouth open in a voiceless scream before returning to the child again. Elira staggered back, nearly tripping on a rotted floorboard. This place was wrong. Twisted. She turned to flee, but the door slammed shut behind her with a sound like a coffin lid. The room darkened, shadows bleeding out from the corners, reaching toward her feet like vines. Elira, the voice hissed, no longer soft, no longer childlike. You must choose. What do you mean? She gasped. The mirror flickered again. Now it showed her. Elira Gray, standing in this very attic, but not quite. In the reflection, she was dressed in black, her hair unbound, her eyes hollow. And beside her stood Adrian, holding her hand, whispering something too faint to hear. This is what could be, the mirror seemed to say. Then the scene shifted. Elira saw herself walking away from Thornfell, alone on a snow-covered road, her breath ragged and cheeks raw with cold. Behind her, the manor burned, its spires crumbling into ash, its secrets consumed by flame. No Adrian. No ghosts. Just silence. This is what must be. She closed her eyes, overwhelmed. The visions fought within her, hope and devastation, love and betrayal. But somewhere beneath all of it was the simple truth: Lyra had been left here. Forgotten. Sealed away not only in body, but in memory. Elira approached the mirror. Where are you? She asked, no longer afraid. The glass cracked. A line spidered from the girl's eye downward, and with a faint sound like a sigh, the image blinked out. The room was empty again. When Elira pushed open the attic door, Adrian stood there, pale, eyes red-rimmed. She spoke to me, Elira said softly. She's not gone. Adrian lowered his head. I knew it. You knew. He nodded. I've heard her in dreams. And sometimes, when I passed the hallway at night, I could feel her. The cold. The pull. I wanted to believe it was guilt. But some things don't die just because we stop speaking of them. She needs release, Elira said. Adrian's hands trembled. How? Elira looked past him, down the stairs, toward the library. There's a journal there, she said. Mayla's. And I think it's missing pages. I think she knew more than she wrote. Without another word, she descended the staircase. Back in the library, the fire had gone out. Elira lit a candelabra and found a journal where she had left it. She turned through the fragile pages carefully. In the back, pasted against the inside cover, was a folded letter sealed with a crest she didn't recognize. She broke it open. To whoever finds this, Lyra is not what she appears. She is neither fully child nor fully spirit. What Mora carried in her womb was twisted by rage and madness, by something ancient and nameless that whispered to her in dreams. When Lyra was born, she bore that whisper in her blood. I do not know if she can be saved. But I know she can be freed if someone truly loves her, not as a burden, but as a daughter. Elira stared at the final line, where a second hand had scrawled, "Only the truth can break the glass." She returned to the attic once more, Adrian following close behind. "This ends tonight," she said. They stood together before the mirror. Its surface had dulled, but something still stirred beneath it. "I see you," Elira whispered. "And I do not fear you. Not your sorrow. Not your silence. Not your name." The mirror cracked again, but this time not in anger, in surrender. "I do not know if you are truly Adrian's daughter," she continued, "or a shadow wearing her face. But I know this, you did not choose this. And you deserve peace." Adrian stepped forward. "I failed you, Lyra. I hid you. I buried you in shame. If I could take your place, I would." A final, jagged fracture raced across the glass. Then, the mirror shattered. But instead of falling to pieces, the shards floated upward, like glass butterflies in a beam of moonlight. In their center stood Lyra, no longer a reflection, but a pale form of mist and memory. Her eyes found Elira's. And then she smiled. The first smile she'd ever shown. Her form dissolved, gently, like a soul exhaling for the first time. The attic grew warm again. The shadows retreated. And Elira wept not for herself, but for the child who had finally found release. Downstairs, in the quiet of the now peaceful hall, Adrian poured 2 glasses of wine. He handed one to Elira. "She's gone," he said. "Yes." "Do you hate me?" "I did. And now?" "I pity you," she said. "And perhaps I forgive you." He looked at her, searching. "But I cannot stay," she added. Adrian bowed his head. "I will rebuild," he said. "Good," she whispered. "But without me." At dawn, Elira left Thornfell Hall once more. This time, she did not look back. But in her heart, something had changed. The ache had not vanished, but it no longer ruled her. She carried not Adrian's betrayal, nor Mora's madness, nor Lyra's pain, but the quiet strength of having faced them all and walked forward anyway. The hills rolled endlessly before her like a frozen sea of grass and fog, their ridges gilded in the gold light of early morning. Elira Grey, cloak drawn tight and breath pluming white in the winter air, followed a narrow dirt road that wound westward, away from Thornfell Hall. She had nothing but a small pack, the remnants of her wages as a governess, and the stubborn fire in her heart that refused to die. Her body was weary. Her soul, too. But she walked on, step after determined step, until the dark line of a forest rose before her and a low cottage roof peeked through the trees beyond. The dwelling had once belonged to a herbalist, the locals said. "Dead 5 years now," murmured the old woman at the village mill who handed Elira the key. "No kin. Just left the place to the ivy and wind. It suited her perfectly. She moved in that same day." The cottage sat nestled between twisted oaks and ancient stones, its garden wild with rosemary, rue, and forgotten roots. The interior was simple: one hearth, one bed, a writing desk, and shelves filled with dusty tomes on healing, botany, and folk charms. Here, Elira began her new life, not as a governess, not as a nobleman's bride, not as a phantom in another's shadow, but as herself. She rose early, tending the overgrown herbs. She gathered water from the stream. She began to copy herbal recipes from the old books into a new journal, pages fresh with her own handwriting. The stillness healed her slowly. The ache in her heart dimmed. The echoes of Elira's voice, of Adrian's plea, grew faint. But not forgotten. At night, she would sit by the fire and sketch. Not portraits, but places: the moors, the winding staircases of Thornfell, the cold mirror. It was as if the act of drawing gave form to all she could not say. Yet peace, as always, was a fragile gift. One stormy evening, after 3 weeks in the hollow hills, there came a knock at her door. Not a visitor. A letter. There was no return name, only her own written in slanted script. Miss Elira Gray, at the edge of the hollow. Inside the envelope, a single sheet of parchment, stained at the edges. You do not know me, but I know of you. I saw the light you carried into Thornfell. I saw the mirror break. But the darkness was not bound to the house. It was bound to blood. To you. Come to Whitefen Abbey before the moon wanes. Or what was freed will never truly rest. The keeper of the wan star. Elira stared at the page. Her breath hitched. She read the letter 3 times. Then once more in candlelight. Each time, her sense of dread deepened. Not bound to the house, bound to blood. Was it metaphor? Or something far more literal? Could it be that she shared more with Elira than she had ever realized? Elira had always felt different. A sense of distance from others. Vivid dreams that danced with shadows. Whispers in the dark. But she'd always dismissed them as imagination residue from long nights with books and candles. Now, she was not so sure. And what was the keeper of the wan star? The name stirred something in her memory, a folk tale her mother once whispered when Elira was very small. About a monastery deep in the northern marshes, Whitefen, where the moonlight fell like snow on the graves of the cursed. A place of guardians, protectors, and seals. She should have burned the letter. Instead, she packed her satchel. The journey to Whitefen Abbey took 4 days. She traveled by foot and cart, through sleet and fog, through villages that barely acknowledged her, until the land flattened into dark reeds and black water. Whitefen stood on a raised stone causeway above the marsh, its Gothic arches wreathed in mist. The abbey had long since ceased to house monks, now it belonged to silence and age. Elira approached with the same hesitant reverence she had once given Thornfell, expecting at any moment for the doors to swing open and some dark truth to rush out and consume her. But the door was already ajar. Inside, candles flickered along the nave. Old tapestries hung from the stone walls, and beneath the altar, a figure waited. Draped in a cloak of midnight blue, face obscured by a silver mask. "You came," the figure said. "I had no choice," Elira replied. "Who are you?" The figure lifted the mask. It was a woman. Eyes pale as winter skies. Her hair streaked with white, though her face was youthful, ageless. "I am what remains of the Order of the Wane Star," she said. "Our charge is simple, to bind what was loosed." And Lyra was never truly loosed. She was passed on. Elira's mouth went dry. "To me. You took her pain, her loneliness, her rage. You bore it so she could be free. But part of her lives in you now. And that part must be named, or it will grow. What must I do?" Elira whispered. The woman held out a knife. Not of steel but carved from pale bone and etched with runes. "You must journey to the altar of memory," she said. "Beyond the marsh, in the heart of the hollow. There, you must speak Lyra's true name. And yours." Elira took the blade. Its weight was light, but the burden it carried was immense. That night, Elira dreamt of fire again. Of a cradle in the attic. Of a girl with silver hair laughing behind a mirror that no longer existed. But this time, in the dream, the girl turned and looked at her not with malice but with longing. And said, simply, "Bring me home." The morning mist curled around Elira like a living thing as she stepped from the shelter of Whitefen Abbey onto the winding path leading into the hollow marsh. The landscape stretched out before her, a labyrinth of reeds and murky water, glistening black under a pale sun. Every step on the spongy earth seemed to draw a whisper from the ground itself, as if the land remembered secrets too old for words. Clutching the bone dagger tightly in her hand, Elira moved forward with steady resolve. The keeper's words echoed in her mind, "Speak Lyra's true name. And yours." She knew this journey was not merely physical, it was a pilgrimage into the depths of her soul. The path was treacherous. Twisted roots and hidden bogs threatened to swallow her whole. The cold seeped through her cloak, and the distant cries of marsh birds rang sharp and hollow. Shadows flickered at the edge of her vision, but whenever she turned, only mist remained. After hours of trudging through the marsh, Elira reached a clearing. At its center stood a weathered stone altar, moss-clad and etched with runes faint but unmistakable. The air here felt charged thick with memories and longing. She knelt before the altar, the dagger resting across her palms. Taking a deep breath, she whispered, Elira Verlin, daughter of Mora and Adrian, forgotten no longer. I speak your name to set you free. The wind stilled. From the depths of the marsh, a voice rose soft, trembling, almost a sigh. Elira. Her heart clenched. The voice was no longer a ghostly echo but a call from within. Then, the runes on the altar glowed faintly, a pale blue light spreading like veins through the stone. Elira felt a warmth rising from the earth, through her knees, her chest, into her very blood. She looked down at the dagger. The etched runes shimmered, as if alive. Now it was her turn. Elira Grey, she whispered, voice steady despite the storm within. I name myself as bearer of your pain, as keeper of your truth. With this name, I claim my past and my future. A sudden gust swept across the clearing, lifting strands of her hair and chilling her to the bone. For a moment, the world seemed to blur, and then clarity came. Visions flashed before her eyes, a child's laughter echoing in a sunlit garden, a woman's anguished scream trapped behind locked doors, the steady, aching love of a man torn between duty and desire. She understood now this was not just Lyra's story. It was hers too. As the light faded from the altar, Elira felt the burden lift, not vanish, but shift, becoming something lighter, a seed of hope. That evening, as she returned to Whitefin Abbey, Elira was greeted by the keeper of the Wain Star. You have done what few could, the keeper said, her voice softer now. You have named the shadows and embraced the light within them. Elira smiled faintly. What now? The keeper's eyes gleamed. Now, you prepare for the final journey. To Thornfell. Elira's breath caught. Why return? To face the past, and claim your life. Back in the cottage beyond the hollow hills, the air was thick with silence. Elira sat by the fire, penning the first words in her new journal, not of fear or loss, but of strength and rebirth. The path ahead was uncertain. The shadows still lingered, but for the first time, she did not walk alone. The sky above Thornfell Hall was a bruised tapestry of grey and purple as Elira's footsteps echoed along the familiar gravel path. The manor loomed before her, its ancient stones cloaked in creeping ivy and shadow. Time had not been kind, but the place still held its grim majesty, a fortress of secrets and sorrow. She hesitated at the gate, heart pounding. This was not the timid governess who once walked these grounds, nor the betrayed woman who fled in despair. She was different now, tempered by fire, bound by purpose. The door swung open before she could knock. Adrian Blackthorne stood there, older, wearier, but with a spark of something, perhaps hope, in his eyes. Elira, he said, voice rough. You returned? I did, she replied, stepping inside. Because some truths cannot be left buried. They moved to the library, the heart of the house where past and present collided. Adrian poured 2 glasses of wine, the clink of crystal sounding like fragile promises. I have changed, he began, and I owe you every truth I once hid. Elira nodded, steady. He spoke then, of betrayals deeper than the mad wife, of debts owed and mistakes made. Of Lyra's legacy, not a curse, but a gift twisted by fear. And of the woman Mora, whose madness hid a secret power, a connection to the land itself. You carry that power too, he said. It's why the darkness clung to you. Elira listened, absorbing the weight of generations. Then, Adrian revealed a hidden chamber beneath the manor, a place where Mora once performed rituals to protect her family, a sanctuary of light and shadow intertwined. Together, they descended. The chamber was lined with ancient symbols, candles flickering in eerie patterns. At its center lay a wooden box, sealed with iron and locked with a cryptic puzzle. This is where the curse was bound, Adrian whispered. Elira stepped forward, dagger in hand. With careful fingers, she traced the runes, deciphering the lock's secret. As the box creaked open, a burst of light filled the room. Inside lay a delicate silver locket, engraved with a single name, Lyra. Tears spilled down Elira's cheeks. Her soul is finally free, Adrian said softly. In that moment, past wounds began to heal. But the story was far from over. From the shadows, a figure emerged, Grace, the loyal servant turned keeper of secrets. Her eyes flashed with desperation and madness. You think it's over? She hissed. The darkness does not die so easily. The chamber trembled. Elira and Adrian braced themselves for what was to come, a final battle between love and shadow, truth and lies. Grace's figure emerged from the shadows like a specter bound by bitterness and time. Her eyes glinted with a cold fire, sharp as daggers in the dim chamber of the hidden sanctuary beneath Thornfell Hall. Elira, she whispered, voice laced with venom and warning, you do not understand the forces you have dared to awaken. Mora was never merely mad, she was a vessel of ancient darkness, a power Thornfell could never contain. Elira met her gaze steadily, undeterred. Then I will be the one to bear that power, and bring it into the light. Grace's laughter shattered the stillness, a chilling, brittle sound that echoed like breaking ice. So naive. We are all shackled by blood and shadow, cursed to walk these halls in endless torment. I have seen countless souls like yours, crushed beneath the weight of their own defiance. Adrian stepped forward, desperation and hope warring in his eyes. Grace, this must end. There is no victory in darkness. Only ruin. Let the light cleanse what has long been corrupted. A cruel smile twisted Grace's lips. She raised her hand, and from her fingertips curled a tendril of smoke as black as the void, wrapping itself around Elira and Adrian with suffocating intent. The air thickened, charged with a tempest of ancient grief and fury. Elira felt the icy surge of 1,000 memories, pain, loss, rage all clawing to claim her spirit. Yet beneath the tempest, a flicker of light ignited deep within her heart. A fragile spark of forgiveness, love, and relentless courage. Grasping the bone dagger tightly, she whispered a prayer to herself, the words a shield against the darkness. The blade shone with sudden brilliance, cutting through the swirling shadows like dawn cleaving night. Grace's scream tore through the chamber, fierce and broken, as the dark mist unraveled and vanished like smoke in the wind. Silence fell. Warm, gentle light bathed the room, banishing all traces of the shadow. Adrian moved to Elira's side, taking her hand with trembling reverence. "You have saved us all." Elira gave a faint smile, her voice soft but resolute. "We saved ourselves. Together." With the shadows lifted, Thornfell Hall began to breathe again. Walls heavy with sorrow now held whispers of hope. The haunted halls were cleansed, the past no longer chained the future. Elira chose to stay not as a prisoner of love and guilt, but as a guardian of truth and light. A new life, forged in fire and forgiveness, awaited. The first rays of dawn stretched gently over Thornfell Hall, washing the ancient stone walls in a soft, golden light. The manor, long burdened by shadows, now seemed to breathe anew, as if the very air within its chambers had been purified by the night's ordeal. The storm had passed, leaving behind a quiet calm, an invitation for new life to take root. Elira Grey stood by the large bay window in the drawing room, the fabric of her cloak draped around her shoulders, but her heart lighter than it had been in years. She gazed across the estate's sprawling grounds, the gardens once wild and tangled now blooming with tentative greens, the fountains slowly returning to their soft murmurs. It was as if Thornfell itself had begun to heal alongside her. Behind her, footsteps approached. Adrian Blackthorne entered quietly, a tentative smile tugging at his weary features. His eyes, once haunted, now held a glimmer of hope and renewed purpose. "Good morning, Elira," he said softly, extending his hand. She turned, meeting his gaze. "Good morning, Adrian. The house feels different today." "Lighter." He nodded. "So do I. It is as if the darkness has lifted not only from these halls, but from our very souls." Together, they moved to the hearth, where a small fire crackled gently. The room was suffused with the warm scent of burning oak and wild herbs, Elira's careful touch evident even here. They settled into chairs opposite one another, the silence between them comfortable, no longer weighted by secrets or pain. "Where do we begin?" Adrian asked, his voice tentative. Elira smiled a smile full of quiet strength. "With truth. And with forgiveness." She told him of her plans to restore the gardens, to invite the villagers for healing herbs and gatherings. She envisioned Thornfell becoming a place of light, not darkness, a sanctuary for those burdened by their own pasts. Adrian listened intently, his hope growing with each word. He confessed his regrets, the years lost to fear and silence, but also his desire to change to be worthy of Elira's trust and love. Days turned into weeks. Thornfell Hall became a hub of quiet activity. Villagers came to learn from Elira's knowledge of herbs and healing, while Adrian worked to repair the broken wings of the estate. The air was filled with laughter, cautious at first, but steadily growing stronger. One afternoon, as the sun filtered through stained glass windows, a messenger arrived bearing news from distant relatives, a potential ally in their quest to restore Thornfell's name and legacy. With renewed vigor, Adrian set plans for alliances and repairs, eager to move beyond the shadows that had long defined him. Yet, the past was never far behind. Late one evening, Elira found an old, dust-covered box hidden beneath the floorboards of her chamber. Inside lay letters, correspondence between Moravirlen and an unknown correspondent, hinting at secrets deeper and darker than even Adrian had revealed. The letters spoke of forbidden rituals, sacrifices made in desperation, and a curse that might yet linger, waiting for its moment to return. Elira's heart pounded. The dawn was breaking, but the night's shadows whispered still. She shared the discovery with Adrian, and together, they vowed to face whatever remnants of darkness remained. Their bond, forged through trial and forgiveness, was their shield. In the quiet moments that followed, Elira penned her thoughts into a new journal, a testament to survival, love, and the unyielding hope that guides even the darkest night to dawn. As the sun rose higher, Thornfell stood not as a relic of despair, but a beacon of renewal, a place where the past was acknowledged but no longer held hostage. Elira and Adrian, hand in hand, faced the future not as victims of fate, but as its masters. Days had folded into nights like the turning pages of a book Elira was only beginning to understand. The letters she had found beneath her chamber floor were fragile threads linking her present to a past shrouded in secrets and dark rites. Each letter was written in the hurried hand of Moravirlen, and addressed to an unknown confidant, someone who seemed as enmeshed in Thornfell's shadows as Mora herself. The ink had faded, but the words burned bright with urgency. The bloodline must be protected, even if it means sacrifices beyond reason. The power awakens in the daughters, it must be contained, or it will consume us all. I fear what Elira does not yet know, the curse is not broken, only bound. And it stirs with each passing moon. Elira's fingers trembled as she read the final note, folded twice and tucked beneath the rest. If you find this, know that I loved my daughter and feared her in equal measure. The past cannot be rewritten, but the future can be shaped by those brave enough to face it. Adrian stood by her side, silent but present, his gaze grave. We must understand this legacy, he said softly. Not just for us, but for all who may be touched by it. Their search led them to the manor's vast library, where ancient tomes whispered of blood magic, protective wards, and the ancestral pact made long before Thornfell rose from the earth. They found a diary, weathered and bound in cracked leather. It belonged to a woman named Isolde, Mora's grandmother, who chronicled a lineage entwined with powers both wondrous and terrible. Isolde's words painted a picture of a family burdened by gifts that could heal or destroy, blessings that came with a price, echoes of which now haunted Elira herself. As days passed, the weight of knowledge grew heavier. Elira struggled with the realization that the darkness she had fought might not be an external curse alone, but part of her own nature. One evening, beneath a sky thick with stars, she confided in Adrian. I fear what I might become, she whispered. What if the power in me, like Lyra's, could consume everything I love? Adrian took her hands in his, warmth seeping through the cold night. You are stronger than fear, Elira. You are not alone. Their bond deepened in the quiet that followed an unspoken vow to face whatever came together. Yet Thornfell's shadows were restless. Strange occurrences plagued the manor, whispers in empty corridors, flickering lights, shadows moving just beyond sight. One night, Elira awoke to the sound of soft singing, the same lullaby that had haunted her dreams since her time in the attic. Drawn to the source, she found herself in the chapel, where moonlight pooled like liquid silver. There, in the pale glow, stood a figure cloaked in white, neither fully flesh nor spirit. Elira, the apparition called, voice both ethereal and urgent. You carry the legacy now. Do not let it consume you. The figure vanished as quickly as it appeared, leaving behind a single white rose on the altar. The next day, Adrian discovered an old family crest hidden behind a loose stone in the manor's cellar, a symbol matching the seal on Mora's letters. Together, they traced the emblem to a forgotten crypt deep beneath the estate, sealed for generations. With lanterns and resolve, they descended into the darkness. The crypt walls were carved with sigils of protection and sacrifice, stained faintly with time. At its heart lay a stone sarcophagus, cracked and ancient. Elira approached, heart pounding. Inside, she found not a body, but a small wooden box, ornate, locked, and humming with unseen energy. Using the bone dagger, she unlocked it. Within lay a bundle of dried herbs, a silver pendant shaped like a crescent moon, and a folded parchment. Elira unfolded the parchment, revealing a map, a guide to a place called the Sanctuary of the Wane Star, said to be the origin of her family's power and curse. The discovery marked a turning point. Elira and Adrian prepared to leave Thornfell once more, this time on a journey to the sanctuary, a place where they might uncover the final truths and decide the fate of the legacy they bore. As they packed, Elira paused, her fingers tracing the silver pendant. I don't know what awaits us, she said quietly, but I know we must face it. Adrian nodded, determination shining in his eyes. Together, with the manor behind them and the future uncertain, Elira and Adrian stepped into the rising sun, ready to confront whatever darkness or light lay ahead. The path to the sanctuary of the Wane Star wound through ancient forests where shadows seemed alive, whispering secrets older than memory. Elira and Adrian traveled with weary determination, the weight of their legacy pressing on their souls but tempered by the hope kindled in Thornfell's dawn. For days, the forest enveloped them in a cathedral of green and gold, until finally, before them rose the sanctuary, a stone temple half swallowed by ivy, its spires reaching toward the sky like desperate hands. Elira's heart thundered. This place was the origin, the wellspring of their family's curse and blessing. Together, they crossed the threshold. Inside, the air was thick with incense and magic, a place out of time where the veil between worlds was thin. Ancient runes glowed faintly on the walls, pulsating like a heartbeat. At the center stood an altar, surrounded by a ring of standing stones, etched with the sigils of the Wane Star, the celestial symbol of balance between darkness and light. Elira stepped forward, the silver pendant warm against her chest. "Here," Adrian said softly, "we end the past." She placed the pendant on the altar, and the runes flared, bathing the room in radiant light. A voice, neither male nor female, spoke from the very air. "You have come bearing truth and courage. The legacy you bear is both a gift and a burden. To sever the curse, you must embrace both shadow and light within." Elira closed her eyes and reached deep inside, accepting the darkness and the light, the pain and the love. The ground trembled. A brilliant starburst of energy erupted from the altar, flooding the sanctuary with warmth and clarity. Images flooded Elira's mind, her ancestors, their struggles, their sacrifices. The Mad Mora not as a monster, but as a woman broken by fear and love. Lyra, not a ghost, but a spirit freed to soar. When the light faded, Elira felt reborn whole and free. Adrian took her hands, tears shining in his eyes. "You have saved us all." Outside, the sun rose higher, a new day for Thornfell and for their lives. Years later, Thornfell Hall stood restored, a beacon of healing and hope. Elira led a community dedicated to learning, compassion, and balance. Adrian, ever by her side, helped rebuild the estate into a sanctuary where the past was honored, but no longer feared. Together, they welcomed those seeking solace, the lost, the broken, the brave. And in the quiet moments, when the wind whispered through the trees, Elira would remember the journey the shadows faced, the curses broken, and the light reclaimed. Title: Shadows of Thornfell, The Journey of Elira Grey. Description: In the ancient and haunted Thornfell Hall, Elira Grey's life is shattered by secrets of madness, betrayal, and a hidden legacy. Fleeing a shattered past, she embarks on a perilous journey through shadowed marshes and forgotten sanctuaries to confront the darkness entwined with her bloodline. With courage and compassion, Elira must face ghosts both real and spiritual, uncover family secrets, and break a centuries-old curse to reclaim hope and light, not just for herself, but for all bound by Thornfell's shadow. A haunting tale of love, sacrifice, and redemption that weaves Gothic mystery with a powerful, timeless quest for freedom.